Hello everyone, first news update for 13th of May. Now it's 8:30 in the morning Moscow time, and I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments, and hopefully you will find this episode informative and useful. And in that case, please don't forget to click that like button and leave some commentary. It might be very useful to deal with the algorithm and to reach wider audience, and even better if you can switch from YouTube, if you are watching this episode on YouTube, if you can switch to my Rumble channel and watch this episode there, because my channel is monetized on Rumble and will never be monetized on YouTube. So that might be helpful also, at least in a long run. Link to my Rumble is on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And when it comes to my channel on Rumble, dear friends, let me give you an announcement that this week evening news updates during the live stream will be at 10 o'clock Moscow time. And I hope this change in time from 7 to 10 o'clock will be helpful and more convenient for more members of our community to join the stream. Of course, some 10-15 minutes before live stream begins, maybe some 30 minutes before live stream begins, I will let you know about it on community page on YouTube, on my Telegram channel and Twitter X page. And so that's been said, let's go through some news now. And first of all, I give you this news about progress of the Russian armed forces in the zone of special military operation. TASS news agency is reporting that Russian Defense Ministry confirmed liberation of Katlyrovka settlement in the DPR. And let me show you on the map where this settlement is. It's a southern western flank of Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration. This is a village of Katlyrovka, by the way. And as you can see on your screen, after this village there is just fields until a border with Dnipropetrovsk region. In several areas, Russian troops are basically in a similar position, right next to a border with Dnipropetrovsk region. Same can be said about Orekhovo direction. A few days ago, I reported about liberation of Troitskaya settlement, and the latest reports are that Russian troops are basically finalizing clearing operation in Orekhovo settlement, which is basically located on the border with Dnipropetrovsk region. And I expect that maybe even before end of this week, Russian troops will begin operations to liberate people and settlements in Dnipropetrovsk region itself. That's quite a possibility. Meanwhile, of course, one of the main topics that world media and public is discussing is initiative of Russian president as a response to European threats or threats from the globalists about direct talks between Moscow and Kiev. Russian president spoke about it just a couple of days ago, and even though globalist puppet regimes in Europe were absolutely against these direct talks, they were demanding and still are demanding 30-day ceasefire first, so that they will give some break to their proxies in Ukraine. Russia was thinking other way, and Russian president come up with this initiative to organize direct talks first in Istanbul. And even though initially Kat Kellogg, a special envoy of Trump, was opposing this idea, and he wrote about it on his True Social page, that was, I believe, Trump himself actually praised this idea of Russian president on several occasions, and yesterday he again spoke about this. And so let's listen what US president had to say about this Russian initiative.
On Thursday's meeting with Russia and Ukraine is very important. I was very insistent that that meeting take place. I think good things can come out of that meeting. Stop the bloodshed of the horrible, it's a bloodbath That 5,000 more, it's really much more, I'm trying to be conservative, more than 5,000 soldiers. Russian, they're not American soldiers, they're from Russia, they're from Ukraine, but they're people. They're human souls, and they're being killed at levels that we haven't seen since the Second World War. And it's every week. A lot of drone fighting. It's a whole new form of warfare, and it's violent and vicious. And so that's it.
So, U.S. President once again expressed his support for initiative of Russian president. And you know what is interesting? During these statements in the White House, he actually said that he might even travel to Istanbul for time when these talks between Moscow and Kyiv representatives might take place, which is Thursday, 15th of May. I don't think U.S. president will do this, but anything is possible. In any ways, when I saw the statements of U.S. president, I was thinking to myself, you know what? Seems like Trump and his inner circle, forces that are behind the current administration in U.S. are realizing that offer of Russian president about direct talks between representatives of Moscow and Kiev, in case these talks will be derailed by Europeans or by Kyiv regime, or will be unsuccessful, if it will take place at all, then that will create a unique off-ramp for US, right? To US administration to basically pull out US from this bloody proxy war that globalists are waging against Russia. And this was my take on the situation on this initiative of the Russian president from very beginning, isn't it? From very first day, I said that this is clearly creating an off-ramp potentially for US to withdraw. You know, I was glad to see that yesterday on Duran show, by the way, hosts of Duran, Alex Christoforou and Alexander Mercouris, great leaders of alternative media, independent media, were actually, you know, while discussing Ukrainian crisis, shared their somewhat similar opinion that yes, you know, quite unique off-ramp was created for the US. Intentionally or not, that's a whole different story. We will never know what was motivating Russian president to come up with such initiative, but off-ramp was created, and maybe Washington will use it, because clearly, I mean, they might not get any other opportunity to walk away whilst more or less saving the face, right? So that's why I think the statements of Trump are really interesting and potentially important. But anyways, let's continue. When it comes to this Ukrainian crisis, dear friends, I want to share with you another video from Fox News, short clip from Fox News, and you tell me what is going on with this formerly conservative media outlet, but in reality clearly something that is run by globalists, it seems like, because they are constantly inviting, their anchors are extreme Russophobes, first of all, majority of them, and then they are inviting so-called experts that are clearly morons, right? Uneducated, stupid elements, and they are intentionally or maybe even unintentionally, because these anchors also are stupid and don't really understand what's going on, but they clearly are misleading the public audience of the Fox News. And to demonstrate that, let me give you this short clip when this, I believe he is a 4-star general, by the way, retired 4-star general, Jack Keane, was invited to speak about the Ukrainian crisis. And let's listen what this moron has to say. I mean, you might be surprised how stupid this guy is, you know?
But you know, certainly what has happened over the weekend really motivated Putin to take the action he took, and that is the European leaders met in Kyiv, United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Poland, and they agreed to press with Kyiv and with the United States for a temporary ceasefire on the Russians. But when Putin saw that, within a matter of hours, Stuart, he puts out a release that's saying, I'm willing to meet with the Ukrainian leader face to face, and we can do it in Istanbul. Why is he doing that? Well, he sees that pressure coming. He doesn't want those sanctions. He's likely going to Istanbul to stall, I would imagine. But
I mean, do you see, dear friends? And this is a clearly misleading of the public in US, isn't it? There is no other way to put it. This is either intentional misleading of public of US and audience of the Fox News, or, as I already said, these elements, this anchor of the Fox News and this so-called general check-in, that these guys are just extremely stupid and have no idea what they are talking about, because Russian president, first of all, never said that he will go to Istanbul to have a meeting with Zelensky. He just never said that. He said he offered direct talks between Moscow and Kiev, which means Moscow will send delegation to negotiate if Kiev is ready for these direct talks. And secondly, this so-called general is misleading public in US that Putin afraid of these sanctions. He don't want these additional sanctions because this is too much of a pressure on Russia. Are you kidding me? Collective West already imposed tens of thousands of sanctions on Russia, and anybody in the West thinks that we here in Russia really care about these sanctions? What the hell, man? No wonder public in West, including in US, are completely out of touch with reality. Majority of the public, at least. Majority that takes information from these fake news outlets, basically. That Fox News is a part of. Clearly, isn't it? I just wanted to share this, dear friends, because, I mean, come on, enough is enough. What the hell, isn't it? So Russian president offered direct talks. I don't think he's gonna travel to Istanbul, only if Trump will go to Istanbul. In that case, if Trump's administration and the administration of Russian president will organize face-to-face meeting between two leaders, in that case, I can imagine that Putin will travel to Istanbul on 15th of May, but this is highly unrealistic, right? I don't think Trump was, serious when he was saying that he might travel to Istanbul, because he has quite a busy schedule. He left yesterday US for this Gulf summit that will take place in Saudi Arabia in next several days, during the which Trump might actually announce recognition of Palestinian state. And I did spoke about this topic, what that might mean. So I would not elaborate on that now, but yet again, if somehow Trump will find the time in his schedule to go to Istanbul, in that case, administrations of Trump and Putin probably will work out face-to-face meeting between the two. But Putin is definitely not traveling in Istanbul to have talks with Zelensky, man. No way, right? Zelensky never was that important actor or the comedian to travel to some other country to see his acting. I mean, this is just not serious, right? Anyways, dear friends, I wanted to show you this short clip to, just to highlight how misleading Western MSM is, including ones that are pretending to be conservative, on the conservative side. And also interesting news that special envoy of Trump, one of the most successful people, I will say, in Trump's administration, based on facts, Steve Witkov commented actually on Ukrainian de-escalation, and let's see what he had to say. So The Kiev authorities, renunciation of territories, the use of their Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and the issue of Ukraine's access to the Dnieper and the Black Sea remain the main topics of negotiation on the settlement of the Ukrainian conflict. U.S. Presidential Special Envoy Steve Witkov stated there, and we have quote, the main issues here are the regions, the nuclear plant, and how the Ukrainians can use the Dnieper River and get to their ocean, Witkov told Breitbart News. And also, quote, I think we've done a great job of narrowing it down. The main issues are 5 regions Russia controls, have overwhelming control over 2 of those regions. The Ukrainians have varying degrees of control in their other regions. So it's about how we assess the situation. There is a difference between the front lines, the troop deployments, and their administrative boundaries. We are informally talking to both sides, the US official said, and this statement of Witkov actually confirms that direct talks between Russia and US never really stopped. We had formal meetings between representatives of Russia and the US several times. Witkov himself twice traveled there, twice or 3 times did travel to Russia, met with the Russian president, Russian special envoy, traveled to US. Also, there was a meeting between high delegations, high-ranking officials on the level of foreign ministry and US head of US State Department also. And seems like behind the closed doors, this communication was still ongoing, and Witkov, at least indirectly, is confirming this. And if so, I guess Washington knows well enough where Moscow's stands are. When it comes to ceasefire, we all remember Russian president's statements in 2024 while he had a meeting with the leadership of Russian foreign ministry, when he said that Russia will be ready for ceasefire, will agree on a ceasefire when Kiev regime will withdraw its forces or from Zaporozhye, Kherson, DPR and LPR, because they will, in that case, ground will be created for meaningful discussions. And I think the US is basically trying to base its position on this statements of Russian president, because according to Russian constitutions, these regions are part of Russia, and in no circumstances Putin can agree on anything else, right? Putin cannot agree on a freezing of the conflict, on a temporary ceasefire, if these territories of Russia are not fully liberated. Period. So as long as the U.S. administration understands this, how principled this matter is for Russian Federation, as long as the U.S. administration understands that in no circumstances globalists or the collective West will be able to defeat Russia in this proxy war, and as long as the U.S. administration, current administration, and forces that are behind it are serious about pulling out U.S. from this proxy war, then I think there is a chance for the escalation. There is a chance for the escalation, but unfortunately, the escalation would not happen in near future, because globalists are on a whole different universe, and they are clearly not ready. And there are puppet regimes in Europe, by the way, namely UK, France, Germany, first of all. But they are not ready to acknowledge objective reality, to face the truth that they lost. So therefore, unfortunately, most likely we will face another, at least one or even several, steps of escalation before Western ruling class will finally come to their senses and acknowledge that yes, they lost her, and will agree on the concessions to Russia. It will happen. It will happen eventually. It's just inevitable. But Unfortunately, it will take time, and during this time, more casualties. There will be more casualties and there are more destruction. And there are quite a number of other news, dear friends, that are also important. Although before I share those other news, first this. Dear friends, I hope you like my work and want to help preserve this independent media project, and if so, let me go through several means that can be used for assistance. First is a PayPal platform. Once you click on PayPal link under my videos in description box and in the pinned comment, this account will open, which belongs to my wife Anna Philipson Caballero, so feel free to donate through this account. Second way is a Boosty platform where you can send a tip or donate, which is basically the same, and also you can become a Patreon for the project. You can subscribe to my page while choosing your level of support. Third way is a Patreon platform where I already have 370 extra content videos. You can also choose your level of monthly support from $5 to 10, 20, 50, 100 and become a Patreon, or you can use another feature that Patreon has, which is access to each videos for a certain amount of money. Now this is $3, so you can access to any video for $3. Relatively new feature that Patreon adopted, and it might be helpful also if for whatever reason you don't want to become a monthly supporter. And there is another way, which is a Rumble platform, dear friends. Whenever I have a pre-planned live stream or live stream is on air, you can become a premium subscriber. You can give premium subscription to other members of the community, or you can use a rant feature that Rumble has, which is basically similar to super chat on YouTube. All the links, dear friends, all the links to all these platforms that I just show you are under my videos in the description box and in the pinned comments, including address to crypto wallet. I hope this video will be useful in case you are considering support for my work and this media project. Many thanks to all the members of our community who already supported. Have a wonderful day and take care. Okay. This video might be helpful if you like my work, my channels, and are considering to support. And well, let's continue with some more news, dear friends. And we have RIA Novosti's report that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had a conversation with his Turkish colleague Fidan, and their sides discussed Putin's proposal for peace talks in Istanbul. Let's go for little details in this news. So Russian and Turkish Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Hakan Fidan discussed President Vladimir Putin's proposal for peace talks in Istanbul over the phone. The Russian diplomatic agency, Russian Foreign Ministry, reported on its Telegram channel. We have a quote here from a statement. The heads of foreign policy departments discussed issues related to the initiative of the President Vladimir Putin to begin direct negotiations on Ukrainian settlement on May 15 in Istanbul, statement said. And Putin's proposal for direct negotiations on the night of May 11, Vladimir Putin addressed representatives of Russian and foreign media and proposed that Ukraine resume direct negotiations without preconditions in Istanbul on May 15. The president emphasized that he does not rule out achieving a real ceasefire that will be observed by the Kiev regime. So, okay, sides are talking, Russian side and Turkish side. Before President of Turkey Erdogan also stated that Turkey is ready to facilitate talks between Moscow and Kiev, as it was the case in 2022 in March-April, when Moscow and Kiev actually did reach some preliminary agreements, but then Kiev walked away from these talks after globalists and globalist puppet regimes get involved and derail these talks and their de-escalation. And I think it is a high probability that the globalists will try to do the same now and to derail these talks. They will probably avoid direct confrontation with the White House, which is in support of these direct talks, and therefore I think it is highly likely that in next several days, today, tomorrow maybe, or day after, globalist controlled regimes in Europe, UK, France, Germany, some others, and their proxy regime in Kiev will try to conduct some provocations, potentially large-scale terrorist attacks. That eventually will obviously, if that is the case, most likely will derail any potential talks, right? And by the way, they might not just attack Russia. One should keep in mind that these European masters of the Zelensky's regime may pull out, may conduct provocation or terrorist attack not just on Russian soil and against Russia, but also on Kiev-controlled territory. This happened several times before, and it most likely will happen again, right? So we should keep that in mind also, that European secret services, together with the Kiev regime, may target not just Russia to derail these potential peace talks or to avoid these direct talks with Moscow, between Moscow and Kiev. They might target not just Moscow or the Russian Federation, but also Kiev-controlled territory. They may conduct some assassinations or large-scale terrorist attacks on civilians. They have, they are experts in these false flag operations, right? So everyone should keep that in mind, because I don't think globalists are happy with the idea of direct talks between Moscow and Kiev, especially when White House seems like is on the board, right? So let's see how the situation develops, but we will understand with whom Moscow is dealing, isn't it, in case of these globalist controlled regimes in Europe and their proxy in Kiev. Kommersant newspaper, meanwhile, is reporting that very same globalist controlled regimes are continuing to issue ultimatums and threats towards Russia. And for example, Berlin once again threatens Moscow with EU sanctions if Russia refuses this 30-day ceasefire agreement, which is, by the way, was never gonna fly, this idea of 30-day ceasefire, because why would Moscow give a 30-day break, months-long break to Kiev regime and Kiev regime's forces? I mean, why on earth Moscow will ever agree on that? To allow West to send more weapons to Kiev regime, more munition, more money, and to same time give the West opportunity to rearm, not just rearm, but also reorganize Kiev regime and their Kiev regime's forces, and to give a break, desperately needed break, to Kiev regime's forces that are on a verge of collapse on many sectors of the front line. Why would Moscow ever agree on that? But still, these globalist controlled regimes or globalist regimes in Europe are threatening Russia, pushing for this nonsensical narrative of 30-day ceasefire. And Berlin is among these capitals in the West that are engaged in this nonsensical anti-Russian activity. Okay, and it's not just Berlin, by the way. London is doing the same, Paris, even Warsaw, by the way. I mean, who cares about Warsaw and what Warsaw has to say, for God's sake? But even they, and Baltic states, but what about Baltic states? Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Even they are trying to bark. Unbelievable. But yet again, this is not just these capitals are engaged in this nonsensical, absolutely nonsensical behavior, but also Brussels itself, I mean EU bureaucracy. And for example, we have this report that EU might impose restrictions on 149 Russian vessels or vessels that are directly or indirectly linked to Russia. These are vessels being called shadow fleet that are transporting oil, Russian oil. And according to reports, 25 from these 149 vessels right now at this point are either in the Baltic Sea or in the North Sea, right? And actually, I reported previously, and number of Russian high-ranking officials basically say the same, that it is a high probability that NATO member states, European ones, might actually go ahead with the provocations in the Baltics, right, against Russian assets, or the assets that are one way or another connected with Russia. And basically, I guess it's inevitable at this point that most likely Russian Baltic Navy, Baltic Fleet will probably escort convoys of the vessels that are going in and out of Russian ports. There is no other way around it. Probably these vessels will just pile up like 5, 7, 10 of them at the time, and one of the Russian destroyers or patrol vessel. It don't have to be like a huge vessel, isn't it? Huge military ship. Any military vessel will escort these convoys, and that will be enough for its security, because I doubt that these European NATO member states will attack these vessels or the Russian, under protection of Russian military ship or the Russian militaries directly. So soon we will see most likely picture more and more often. Already there was such an instance, by the way, when several vessels were escorted by frigate, I believe, of Russian Baltic Sea, and such instance is going to become a quite regular occasion in the Baltics and North Sea too. Maybe all around the world, because if it's necessary, then okay, that's what Russia will do. Russia will protect its interests in every possible way, and if it's necessary to organize escort for merchant vessels, okay, we will do it. Russia has enough resources to organize that. And meanwhile, by the way, Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that a spokeswoman of Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, also commented on these threats from Europe, ultimatums, demands, and let's go through her take. So Zakharova accuses the West of repeating their tactics of the Minsk agreement. So Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova criticized the Western countries' initiative for the temporary ceasefire, emphasizing their interest in intensifying the confrontation with Russia. Western countries are insisting on the 30-day truce, seeking to give Kiev time to restore its military potential and continue the conflict with Russia. This is stated in a commentary by their official representative of the Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova. She also emphasized that earlier Berlin and Paris helped Kiev prepare for military action using a Minsk agreement solely to buy time. As it turned out later, Berlin and Paris helped Kiev prepare for this war. In 2022, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and former French President Hollande said that no one planned to implement the Minsk agreements, and the agreement themselves were needed to buy time for Ukraine to prepare for solving the Donbass problem, as they were calling, by force. Today, the same countries are seeking 30-day truce to give Kiev respite, to restore its break, to restore its military potential and continue confrontation with Russia. Zakharova said, according to her, Paris and Berlin remain the main supporters of providing Kiev with conditions for prolonging the confrontation, and they view a ceasefire only as a way to strengthen the position of Ukrainian side, which is true. And I will add London also, by the way. It's not just Paris and Berlin, but also London, obviously, all these capitals, I mean, regimes there in France, Germany, and UK clearly are controlled by globalists, and in many other countries in Europe, by the way, smaller countries, but still, right? But statement of Zakharova itself is absolutely on point, isn't it? Absolutely on point. Western so-called elites did try, and unfortunately successfully, to use Minsk I, Minsk II agreements to buy time for this Western-backed terrorist regime terrorist regime in Kiev, and they are trying to do the same, to pull off same trick now with this 30-day ceasefire, but it will not fly. It will not fly. Absolutely not. Russia will never agree on that, right? And when eventually, obviously, this conflict gonna die down, and all conflicts in history eventually has ended through some diplomatic means or by unconditional victory of one side, isn't it? But all conflicts are ending one way or another, and at some point, maybe once all Russian territories are liberated in new regions, maybe Moscow will say, you know what, let's have a talk. And if Kiev will agree, then who knows, maybe some ways will be found to de-escalate, or there is only another alternative, by the way. Moscow will go all the way. Moscow will have no option but to go all the way, not necessarily until borders of Poland, but definitely until a administrative border of Western Ukraine. I said this many times before, and I think situation is moving exactly in that direction. But when it comes to Zakharova's statements, she's 100% on point. Only reason why globalist puppet regimes in Europe are pushing for this, and their allies worldwide are pushing for this 30-day ceasefire, is to buy time for Kiev regime that is desperate for break. Kommersant newspaper, meanwhile, is reporting that, very same European Union will allocate another 900 million euros from Russian assets for weapons and munition for Ukraine. And this is in last several weeks. This is second time when EU is stealing Russian assets. Couple of days ago, last week that was, I believe, or week before, there was also reports that over €1 trillion or something like that was allocated for Kiev regime from frozen Russian assets, right? So I wonder what is the true volume right now of these frozen Russian assets, because clearly EU bureaucracy and bureaucracy of EU member states are stealing these assets, right? And one day, not necessarily tomorrow, but one day in the future, Europe will have to pay back all this money, all these assets that they stole with the interest. And that is going to be a big burden on European taxpayers, because these criminals that are in charge of EU bureaucracy or EU member or majority of EU member states, they're not going to pay back Russia from their own pockets, right? They're going to pay back from taxes that they are collecting, right? And that's why, by the way, people in Europe, I really hope that people in Europe will wake up, man, because before very their eyes, their own governments, their own so-called elites are destroying their future and future of their kids, future of the next generations, and how it is even possible that people in Europe's majority is still asleep, in a sleep, deep sleep. What the hell, man? I don't know. But yet again, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we will learn in upcoming days or weeks that EU bureaucracy already steal some 20-30% of frozen Russian assets. Not just profits from these frozen assets, but also assets themselves. Most likely this is the case. Anyways, by the way, I mean, at this point, so much damage being done to reputation of Europe, to reputation of European financial and the banking system, that one have to be complete moron to invest anything in Europe at all, because they will have no guarantees ever that their investments are safe. These frozen assets, by the way, you think what was that? That was Russian investment in European economies for hundreds of billions, right? And that's how Europe is thanking Russia for this support. They are stealing these investments, right? So if you are, for example, Indian investor or investor from Middle East or from whatever place in this world, would you really invest in European economies when you know that your assets can be stolen at any point? At any point. If they can pull off this against Russia, then, I mean, they can do it against anybody, right? So current elites in Europe definitely destroy future of that part of Eurasian continent forever, I think, because this process of degradation of Europe is just seems unstoppable at this point. Anyways, dear friends, let's continue. And well, yesterday I posted on my Telegram and also Twitter X page this image, which is a first image of Israeli-American captive Eden Alexander after he was released and handed over to Red Cross by Hamas. And also interesting point is that Steve Witkov, special envoy of Trump, was in Israel, by the way, and I believe Witkov will travel to America together with Eden Alexander. Maybe they already are in the US. I don't know latest on that, but this individual either already released or he is already released, by the way. So he's either still in Israel or he's already on his way to US or inside the US itself. Yet another success on part of Steve Witkov. I mean, surprisingly, this personality that not professional diplomat, he is from business, isn't it? This person that is not professional diplomat, I mean, surprisingly, is quite successful at what he does, right? As a special envoy of US president in the Middle East, I remind you, dear friends, that Steve Witkov played a key role also when Hamas was releasing, when agreement was reached between Hamas and Israel, and many hostages were released by Hamas, and also Israel released Palestinian hostages. Now this story, and so also Witkov played a key role in negotiations, direct talks between US and Iran, although I think Witkov may be not informed about it. He might just have some guesses, but I think White House is not genuine when it comes to talks with Iran and attempts to de-escalate. Something else is going on there. And I did share my take on the situation in previous updates. There is no need to repeat myself now. And Witkov did play and continues to play a key role in talks between Moscow and Washington. So I will say he is the most successful member of Trump's administration at this point. I mean, share your opinion, dear friends, what you think, but that's how I see the situation. And it is quite surprising because this person is not a professional diplomat. I mean, I guess his professional career in business let him learn some skills, some good skills that he is exercising now to be successful in the field of diplomacy. Also interesting news, dear friends, that Donald Trump, while being in Saudi Arabia to participate in this Gulf Summit, according to reports, will meet with new leader of Syria, al-Sharaa, which is well, quite something, especially if you take in account that this person is still declared as designated as a terrorist by US. So we will find out soon. We will find out soon. But yes, it is a possibility that Trump will meet with the current leader of Syria or the pro-Turkish proxy regime in Syria. And when it comes to Turkey-US relationships, by the way, I mean, clearly something is happening behind the scenes, because there is also this report that Kurdistan Workers' Party announces self-dissolution. So Kurdistan Workers' Party, recognized as a terrorist in Turkey, has announced its dissolution and laying down of arms. The Rudaw agency reported, this is a Kurdish media outlet, Rudaw, I believe. And this is a big deal, of course. Permanent leader of Kurdistan Workers' Party and their Kurdish people, one might say, Öcalan, who is imprisoned by Turkey, recently called on Kurdish people to get engaged not in a military struggle, but in a political struggle. He called basically Kurdistan's Workers' Party to demilitarize. And that's exactly what is happening. And I think this could not be done. This could not happen without involvement of certain outside players, US, for example, in particular, because US historically had quite close ties with the Kurdistan Workers' Party and their Kurdish formations in Iraq, for example, or in Syria, right? Where US troops are actually still protecting areas where Kurdish people are in charge. And now when we have this report also that Trump might meet with the leader of this Turkish proxy regime in Damascus, al-Shara, it is inevitable to ask question, what is happening? What kind of talks were in place between Washington and Ankara, and what kind of agreements sides did reach? Because we clearly see concrete steps being made towards that are positive, very positive to Turkey. And what will US, for example, ask for these positives? And one thing that comes to my mind is assistance from Turkey in a war against Iran. I mean, you tell me what is your take, dear friends, but I think what is going on is that US and potentially a number of other countries from collective West are talking to Turkey behind the closed doors, giving Turkey some favors that already visible for exchange, and for exchange they are demanding Turkish assistance and maybe even direct participation in a war against Iran. Because I'm 100% convinced, by the way, that Trump's administration, on a board with Netanyahu's regime in Israel to attack Iran. I'm not buying into these rumors that are spread by Western propaganda outlets that there is some rift between Trump and Netanyahu, between Trump and the Zionist movement, or between Trump and the Israeli lobby. I'm not buying this, because take a look at the people in Trump's administration. Literally everyone there, literally everyone, by the way, are Zionists, with no exceptions. Even Tulsi Gabbard, by the way, is a Zionist. So, I'm not buying into this nonsensical narrative that Trump is no longer partnering with Netanyahu, and Trump wants to avoid escalation with Iran. No, This is all false narratives. And that's why I'm saying the talks that are taking place with mediation of Oman between US and between Washington and Tehran are just an attempt on part of US political class to create this false narrative that US did try diplomatic means also before they run out of options, and only after they start thinking about military actions. That's what is going on. This is all part of this geopolitical game that globalists or Western ruling class has to create a large-scale war in the Middle East by attacking Iran, which will eventually, of course, provoke complete shutdown of navigation in the Persian Gulf through Hormuz Strait, which is going to be huge strike on Chinese economy, because China is a main beneficiary at this point when it comes to energy exports of their Middle Eastern countries or Gulf countries, let's say, right? So I did spoke about it quite a few times before. It's a complex geopolitical game that Western ruling class is playing, in which US is clearly in a leading position, being used once again as an enforcer, and unfortunately, yes, I think it's only a matter of time before Western ruling class and their controlled countries, first of all US, potentially UK, maybe France, and of course Israel, by the way, and some others, potentially Turkey, will attack Iran and provoke a regional war that will devastate not just Middle East but also rest of the world. And when that will happen, I think we may start counting time for US, because I don't think US as we knew it in a modern one, I don't think that US will survive. But clearly there is something is going on, isn't it? And this is my reading of the big picture. All these concessions before Turkey is done by US and some other countries in the collective West, and also by Israel, by the way, which has also close ties with the Kurdish movements. All these concessions being done to bring Turkey on board on this matter of war against Iran. We will see, dear friends. Share your take on the situation, what you think. Meanwhile, reports are coming in about clashes in Libya, in Libya's capital, Tripoli. And when I see this news first, I was thinking maybe forces of Benghazi were attacking Tripoli, but it didn't turn out to be that way. Actually, there was internal conflict between different factions of Tripoli government. And as you know, dear friends, Libya is divided on several parts. There is two major groups that are in charge. One is based in Tripoli, which is recognized as internationally as a government of Libya, and there is another influential group that is in charge of Benghazi and eastern Libya, which is controlled by Haftar, under leadership of Haftar. And well, when I see this news, I was thinking Haftar's forces attacked, or Benghazi's forces attacked Tripoli, but no, it was an internal conflict, which is quite an indicator that probably it is only a matter of time, and Tripoli's government will collapse, and probably Benghazi will overtake. But yet again, let's see what is going to happen. In any case, by the way, everything that has happened in Libya, all the destruction, all the devastation, all the tragedies is to be blamed on Europe, obviously, and US, on NATO, because it's them that destroyed this country. That was, you might not believe, but by level of standard of life, Libya was one of the first on African continent during the Gaddafi. And then European states and the US toppled Gaddafi's regime, killed him basically, authorized his killing, and turned Libya into market for human trade. That's what they did, and I'm not at all exaggerating. After the destruction of Libya, Gaddafi's government, people were sold on the markets in Libya, by the way. That's what Europe did to this country, and US. I guess that's what European values are, that Brussels bureaucrats are love to talk about. European values and principles. They turned Libya, one of the most prosperous countries in Africa, into slave market. Now situation is a little bit improving, although there are certain parts of Libya, by the way, that are under control of some gangs, not under control of Benghazi or Tripoli, but under control of some gangs, and they still are trading with people. With everything, and people included. And this is consequences of actions of Europe and US, NATO. And there are a few more news, dear friends, and I will end this update on that. RT is reporting, and I'm quite sure majority of our community already informed that US and China did reach a tariff deal, which is a good stuff, by the way. Really good stuff for both countries and for global economy, because when two major economies in this world are engaged in a tariff war or trade war, that is a destruction on a global scale, obviously. So the US and China have agreed to scrap or suspend most of the new trade duties imposed since early April, pending further talks, according to a joint statement released on Monday, following 2 days of talks in Geneva, Switzerland. Over their weekend, the US agreed to hold their initial 34% new duties introduced by Trump on April 2nd for 90 days, while China will do the same with its own 34% tariffs rolled out in response to that measure. The US and China will also roll back all tariff hikes imposed since April 8, but keep in place the baseline 10% tariff on mutual imports. This means that the US overall tariffs on Chinese goods will stand at 30% due to 20% duty introduced back in March. And Chinese tariffs will stand at 10%. So really good news for both countries and for the global economy, for world economy. But question is, why on earth Trump even started this tariff war, by the way, when after a couple of weeks he is rolling back basically on his own decisions? Maybe White House did not really think through of consequences of this tariff war. Maybe that is the case. Maybe they overestimated weight of US and underestimated the weight of China and some other countries in this world. Anything is possible, but in any case, this is news itself is good that, well, okay, at least eventually Washington come to realization that this tariff war is not good for US itself, but optics are bad because there are many articles, isn't it, that US basically capitulated in this tariff war, and it does certainly looks like retreat of White House from its previous stance, right? But anyways, whatever the case, seems like world economy is happy about this development, and markets in US, by the way, stock markets opened in a green, and in just a couple of hours gained at least 2 trillion in value and more, and markets worldwide did reacted positively, even though I'm not big fan of these markets, because I think all these stocks are immensely inflated anyways, and that's why they are gaining and losing trillions in a couple of hours whenever some major news is broke. So even though I'm not big fan of these markets and stuff, because I think it's all fake and inflated, still it's an indicator, isn't it, that well, world economy did react positively on this agreement between Washington and Beijing. And I will end this update, dear friends, on this news that Russian ruble continues to strengthen, to become stronger, which is not really good news if you think about for Russian economy in number of ways. So the dollar exchange rate fell below 18 rubles. According to trading data, dollar settlement rate used as a benchmark over the counter market fell below 80 rubles for the first time since April 21. Which is yet again, on one hand, yes, it sounds good that yes, ruble is getting stronger and stronger, and ruble regained positions quite significantly last couple of months. But for Russian exporter companies, this is definitely not good exchange rate, and I think this is also not good news for Russian federal budget, because stronger ruble is becoming less and less income Russian budget has from taxes that are obviously to be paid. Many companies, especially big ones, exporter companies, they are exchanging dollars or whatever currency they are trading in, right, to buy rubles and to pay taxes. And stronger ruble is, then less rubles eventually are getting to federal budget. So therefore, I think it is time for Russian central bank and the economical bloc of the government to deal with this issue. Ruble cannot go any stronger. It might sound counterintuitive, but in reality, for Russian economy, it is better if ruble will stop strengthening this much and will return to a position of 110 rubles for dollar, because that will make that will ease pressure on Russian federal budget in terms of dealing with the deficit, and that will also make happier exporter companies that are paying huge volumes of taxes, right? So we need those companies. And when it comes to inflation, one may say, what if ruble will get weaker, then inflation will rise. I don't think so. Inflation might might increase a little bit, but one should keep in mind that a couple of months ago, when ruble already was on the level of 110, businesses, practically all the businesses, hiked the prices, right? And when ruble became stronger, they did not drop these prices. They kept it, right? That's what business does always, by the way. You give them opportunity, they will try to make more money. That's a business, by the way. You cannot really blame them for that, right? It's a business. So therefore, these businesses are already hiked the prices. So if ruble will go back to a level of 110 for dollar, I don't think we will see significant increase in inflation. It's not going to happen. So therefore, I expect before end of summer, exchange rate to be exactly on that level, 110, potentially bit more, 115 or 120 for $1, and that will make clearly happier Russian exporter companies, and that will ease significantly pressure on Russian federal budget in terms of deficit. So, and dear friends, I think Russian central bank and the economical bloc might have to use some artificial means to, to stop this strengthening of the ruble. Let's see. After all, I'm not a financial expert, isn't it? So, my understanding of the situation may be, may be wrong. But, let's remember this during the, at the end of the summer. Let's remember what I said now and what kind of exchange rate will be in August. I think it's going to be 100, 110 rubles for a dollar, maybe even more than that. Okay, that's been said, dear friends. I'm gonna end this update on that. And wow, this is a quite a long update, dear friends, longer than an hour. I didn't expect that, but hopefully you will find it informative and interesting, useful. And if so, please, dear friends, click that like button if you didn't yet. Leave some commentary just about anything, by the way. More likes and comments means more chances that we will influence algorithm and this video will reach wider audience. Also, please share this video with your friends if you can, or share information about the existence of my channel. And if you like my work and if you want to support, you can do it through several means. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And before I go, let me remind you, dear friends, that 10 o'clock this evening, Moscow time, I will have a live stream on Rumble with the latest news. So I hope you will manage to join. Have a wonderful day and take care.